Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Welcome back to the channel. I am super excited, if you guys can't tell, because we are just a day away from the start of the 2022 MLB season. That's right, tomorrow, Thursday, April 7th, is officially opening day for all of baseball. We have been delayed a few weeks here. I'm not exactly sure when baseball was supposed to start, but nonetheless, we have opening day Thursday tomorrow. And we are super excited. With that comes, of course, MLB DFS for basically the rest of the season. I'm super excited because baseball in itself is my favorite sport to play DFS through for a number of reasons. If you're somebody that's a stat data geek like myself, you're going to really enjoy the sport if you haven't been a part of it already, because it does have everything you can imagine in terms of statistics, in terms of data mining, in terms of really all of those different things to build lineups through, both through pitchers and through batters. We'll talk about all of that throughout the season. We'll build lineups. We'll have a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys are as excited as I am for opening day tomorrow and for the season in general. In addition to all of that, I have wanted to put a video like this together for quite some time, just have not really had the time, but here we are, right? This is going to be a two-part video. This is going to be a DFS primer for the start of the 2022 MLB season. I'm going to keep this video pretty general. The idea here is simple. It's to provide you guys with a lot of information about MLB DFS, what it is, what you should be looking for, and some of the sources where I believe you can get information, get data to help put yourself in the best position to win cash games, to win tournaments, to put together lineups in general, because that's what it's all about. Nobody is going to win every single day in daily fantasy sports. No one's going to win in baseball, especially in daily fantasy sports, day in and day out. But you need to understand some of the sources that can provide you information, some of the data points that you should be relying on when building lineups. And really the goal, of course, like all daily fantasy sports, all DFS, is to put yourself in the best position possible in terms of your lineups for success. So we'll be talking about that. Again, this is going to be a two-part video. The first video here is going to be that information side. What is MLB DFS? What you should be looking for in some of those sources. And then hopefully I'll be putting out a second video here where I will go through the process of how I select my pitchers, select my bats, kind of the start to finish on a slate, particular slate, and putting together a lineup or multiple lineups, whatever that may be. So hopefully these videos are helpful for you guys. Again, I've wanted to put them together for quite some time. It's just hard to put, a lot of this information together before the season starts, but here we are. We're going to do it. If you guys enjoy these videos, if you enjoy this content, if it's helpful to you guys, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That's the only thing I ask of you guys. It does go a long way when you give these videos a thumbs up. It helps that YouTube algorithm, helps me get promoted here, and helps these videos get out to more people. So again, that's all I ask of you guys. I won't spend any more time on that. We will get into the nitty gritty here. We'll talk about the 2022 season, this DFS primer, and what you guys should be looking for in general while you set your lineups. So some general information, what you're looking for really this year in particular, because it is a little bit of a different year, but in general with DFS, MLB DFS, how it differs from other sports, whether that be basketball or football or golf or anything else, MLB DFS is quite different. There are certain things that apply here that other sports just simply don't see. One of those being volatility and variance. This by far, if you're talking about bats in particular, hitters, right? This is the most volatile, highest variance sport among all DFS sports. Now, there might be some ancillary one out there that I'm missing, but if you're talking about the mainstay of DFS sports, baseball is just that. It makes it hard, but also very, very exciting. It kind of gives everybody a chance here. Again, you're trying to put yourself in the best position possible with your lineup. You're not going to nail it every single day. You're not going to nail every single batter every single day. It's just impossible. And anyone that's trying to sell you, the bill that they can do that, they can provide you, 100% winning lineups is simply just lying. Again, because baseball is extremely volatile in terms of what players do, how they produce, how they put out points in DFS, and then the variance of the sport itself is just it lends itself to being that difficult. So I gave a little bit of an example here. You probably hear it elsewhere, but Mike Trout, for example, one of the best hitters in baseball. And if you can pick anyone else, Acuna Jr., Juan Soto, anyone you can think of that's a great hitter, one of the best hitters, the best hitter in baseball, I'll take Mike Trout here. 15 to 20% of the time, he goes 0 for 4. That's basically how it works. In fact, it's not uncommon for someone like Mike Trout or any of the guys I just mentioned to go 2 or 3 days without a hit. Now, these are some of the best players, some of the best bats in baseball. And if you think about it, if you hit 300, you're hitting 30% of the time, right? That's not very often. That's below half. So again, apply that to baseball in general. Understand what you're getting into here. In addition to that, we talk about home runs a lot in MLB DFS because they kind of are king in terms of your bats and your hitters. Home runs produce a ridiculous amount of points. It's something you want to try to target. You want to target power. Again, we'll talk about all of that in another video. But if you take Mike Trout, for example, he hits a home run about 1 every 4, 1 every 5 games. So you could go an entire week, theoretically, without him hitting a home run. You could go 3, 4, 5 days. It's not likely, but 3, 4, 5 days without him actually getting a hit. Now, hopefully he's going to get on base. There's other ways to score points, but again, you could get 0 points out of a very, very expensive player. Now, apply that to other sports. You're not going to, unless a quarterback gets hurt, it's extremely, extremely, extremely rare. I don't even know if I've ever seen it for a quarterback to get 0 points and start an entire game. Same thing with wide receivers when you have PPR involved. Same thing with running backs that are actually going to get carries. Of course, you could give an example of a third string running back not getting any points, but I'm talking about actual starters, which is what we're sticking to here in baseball. Baseball is unlike all other sports, again, because it's very, very common for a player to get 0 points. So that's the variance, that's the volatility that you have to be aware of when you're playing DFS baseball. And quite frankly, it's what makes it so exciting. Now, stacking is vital to tournament success. You hear it in other sports. You stack quarterbacks with wide receivers, sometimes running backs with defenses. If you're playing NBA DFS, you can stack teams, you can stack games, things like that, right? But it is very, very, very important in baseball. 4 to 5 batters from a single lineup need to be stacked together in most tournaments. And when I say tournaments, I'm talking non-cash games. Cash games, you can still stack. It's still prudent, but you don't necessarily have to. The idea here is you're trying to, again, set up yourself for success in your lineup. You're trying to correlate players together. So what you're going to look at, and again, we'll break this down in further detail in another video. You want maybe the 1, 2, 3, 4 hitter in a lineup on a team that is maybe away, meaning they're going to get an extra at bat that's going to potentially score a lot of points. So if you're sticking to maybe some Vegas totals, a team may be projected to score 6 runs. Well, if you stack 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the lineup, those guys, A, are more likely to see more at bats because they're at the top of the order, and B, they're likely to be the strongest players, hitters, bats of that lineup, and C, more likely than not, are guys that are going to be a part of that scoring, right? So if your first guy in your stack gets on base, your second guy also gets on base, and your third guy hits a home run, boom, all of those guys score points together. Yes, you have one guy getting the major hit, the home run, but he's getting 3 RBIs. You have guys scoring. You have guys potentially stealing bases. All of that goes together. Again, it's about correlation. You want to stack. It's vital to tournament success in baseball. It's also, again, another thing that makes it very, very fun to play. There's a strong emphasis, I already touched on it very briefly there, on Vegas totals and odds. Not that it doesn't apply in other sports, it most certainly does. We break it down in our football videos. It's one of the first slides we talk about is some of the Vegas totals, the projected points to be scored, but it is also very important in baseball. Pitchers matter, bats matter, places you play matter, all of that feeds into that Vegas total, those odds. So you want to take basically pitchers against teams that have very low totals. You want to stack players, stack bats from teams that are projected to score a lot of points. You can kind of see how it plays out here, but in general, there is a strong emphasis on Vegas in MLB DFS. I talked about it very briefly. Intense data, intense statistical analysis here in baseball. I think that's another thing that makes it very fun, but you have to be prepared for that. you can do whatever you want, right? You can set a 5-minute lineup. You can use an optimizer, just click optimize, set a lineup. But in general, this is a sport where you can, as somebody that even plays with a low dollar amount, a low purse amount, if you put in the time, you look at the data, you look at the statistics, you can really do well in MLB DFS just by putting in basically some sweat and tears into building your lineups and looking at the data. Weather, time of year, time of day, very, very important. In MLB DFS, nearly every stadium is going to be affected by weather to some degree, right? So if you talk about early, now there are domes, but if you talk about the earlier part of the season, May, April, this time of year, it's cold in certain parts of the country. When it's cold, the ball flies basically worse. It's harder to get home runs. It's harder to hit the ball deeper. All of that matters. Later in the year, same deal. It gets warmer. June, July, August. You're going to see the weather kind of kick up in terms of degrees. Places like Chicago they basically go from a very cold Chicago weather early part of the season park where it's hard to hit to a very hitter friendly park as it gets really, really hot in Chicago. Time of day matters. Same type of deal, right? You have early games that get played during the day. You have night games that get played at night. Temperatures fluctuate. All of that matters. I talked about parks and stadiums. There are certain parks that are known as hitters parks. There are certain parks that are known as certain stadiums that are known as pitcher stadiums. Good example, PNC Park in Pittsburgh has been known as a pitcher stadium for a long time. Same thing in San Francisco. If you flip that around, somewhere like Colorado where the Rockies play, that stadium is notoriously known as basically a runway for home runs. They expanded that stadium even to try to alleviate some of the home runs, and all that resulted in is more doubles, more triples. The ball just flies better there at altitude. So all of this matters. All of this is data, again, that you can look up. ESPN has a great ranking of home runs, doubles, triples, all of that type of stuff by park, by stadium. You can really see where the ball flies better in terms of hitters and where pitchers pitch much better. Again, all of this is going to go into your lineups, into your decision making. You have projected lineups versus locks. This becomes very difficult. You're going to see as I put out videos, I will try to put out videos as early as possible, but you really can't talk about a lineup or talk about building your lineup until later in the day. Now you can look at projected lineups. Projected lineups will come out every single day, but they don't lock them in, and they change often, right? You change the order in which players are in the lineup. You change actual other players playing, right? A backup shortstop might get a day. A catcher usually gets a rest every couple of days. Things like that matter. So you're dealing with projected lineups versus what actually locks in after maybe 5-6 p.m. Makes it a little bit difficult to set a lineup, makes it a little bit difficult to put video together on my end, but we'll talk about all of that in the future, just something to be aware of. And now you have the universal DH. So in previous seasons, if you're unaware, the National League versus the American League always had a DH. The National League did not. Talked about changing it for a long time. Now you have a universal DH. So something to be aware of. There's going to be an extra bat, a player that's literally not going to do anything but hit the ball in lineups now. And then finally, I'll talk about optimizers. I'll show you some optimizers. Optimizers are very, very important for large field entries. It's going to be very difficult for you guys to grind and get all this data together and put together maybe 150 lineups just by hand. It's really, really hard. Again, with everything I had just mentioned, using projected lineups, using locks, you're gonna need an optimizer, simply put, to be successful in those big field 150 plus entry type of tournaments. So you can play single entries, you can do all of that. I'm not saying you have to use an optimizer, but something to consider as we move forward. Selecting players. Now, something, again, I'll run through this very quickly here. This is going to be very general, but you have batters and hitters and you have pitchers. That's kind of how your lineups are set up, right? If you've played DFS before in MLB, you have your batters. It's usually 8 per DFS lineup. And then pitchers, depending on the site, it's usually 1 or 2 per 2 in DraftKings, 1 in FanDuel. Now, batters and hitters, that's the extreme variance, right? Those are the guys I mentioned, Mike Trout, Acuna, all of those guys are guys that are going to go 0 for 4 at times, 0 for 5 at times, 3 days without a hit, things like that. That's where the volatility comes from. That's where the variance comes from. Just be aware, those are the players I'm talking about, the batters and the hitters with those particular types of I don't want to call them issues, but just things that you need to be aware of. I mentioned 8 per DFS lineup. Now, I don't usually play Yahoo or some of the other ones, but in general, on DraftKings and on FanDuel, you get 8 per lineup that you have to fit in there. 4 to 5 total opportunities per player. So I'm talking about at bats. Now, if you're sticking to the players at the top of an order, you're typically going to get 4 opportunities, 4 at bats for that particular player. If you're talking about somebody at the bottom of the lineup, you usually will get 4, but potentially not. And then the potential to get 5 at-bats really only exists, or anything more than that, only exists for those guys at the top of the order. So again, talking about a guy going 0 for 4 or 0 for 5, Mike Trout, somebody like that, that is, again, talking about his opportunities. You get 4 or 5 opportunities per player, per batter, per hitter, per game, something to make sure you guys are aware of. There are guaranteed or fixed opportunities. Again, unless he gets hurt or pulled or something like that, somebody like Mike Trout is going to be guaranteed to get 4 at-bats. A single swing can completely change the value of a player. So you could be, again, 0 for 3, didn't get a walk, didn't get a hit, nothing going on, smashes a 2-run home run in the 8th inning. It has 4th at-bat, completely becomes a value player. So again, a lot of shifts, a lot of variance, a lot of volatility that can happen in baseball. Again, be aware of all of that. Higher batting order, I did briefly talk about this, equals more opportunity. Just naturally, the guys at the top of the order, they're the first to get at-bats and potentially are going to get that extra 5th at-bat as the lineup, comes around, switches over, flips over, whatever you want to call it. Scoring leads to more opportunity. Vegas totals matter. So you want guys that are on teams that are going to score a lot of runs. Naturally, that makes sense. Splits versus pitcher handedness is very, very important. So you have guys that literally a left-handed at bat, typically a left-handed batter typically has trouble with a left-handed pitcher. That's typical, right? A right-handed typically does worse versus right-handed pitchers. All of this matters as you're selecting your batters. All of this is stuff you want to be aware of as you're selecting your lineups, picking your players. Now, there are exceptions. There's guys that can hit literally everything, but splits do matter. Some pitchers are just extremely, extremely good versus a certain, batter, right or left. So again, all of this is going to feed into your decision making. And then I mentioned it, I won't spend any more time other than the fact that you want to make sure you're employing stacking strategies with your batters and your hitters, whether that's 1 through 4, 1 through 5, 2 through 6, whatever it is. Make sure you are aware of the importance of that. Now, pitchers, they are less volatile, less variance versus hitters and batters. But there are some things you want to be aware of. Their guaranteed opportunities are what I would call less guaranteed. Now, it does make a difference if it's an ace pitcher versus somebody else, but there are certain things you want to be aware of. Now, 1 to 2 per DFS lineup. DraftKings is traditionally 2. FanDuel is traditionally 1. Other sites I'm not certain on, but again, usually you get 1 to 2 per lineup. They are the most expensive players. There are some really cheap ones that come with high risk, but in general, they're going to eat up a bulk of your actual salary when selecting players, when selecting your lineups. They get roughly 20 to 30 opportunities per outing. That can fluctuate a lot. And when I say an opportunity, I'm saying facing a batter. So you figure there's 3 outs per game, or I'm sorry, per inning. You could get potentially 3 strikeouts, which I mentioned there are king, but you get points for every single out. So if you get 3 opportunities per inning, if you go 7 innings, 7, 14, 21, that's potentially 21 opportunities. Somebody gets a hit, that can go to 22, a walk, 23, you know how it works, right? There's more opportunities for pitchers in general, but there's also more opportunity to get damaged because they are, unlike hitters, they can be hurt by some of their performances. Hits matter, runs matter, walks matter. Those are a negative thing against a pitcher, whereas a batter, if he goes 0 for 4, he doesn't lose points. In fact, I'm not aware of any way that a batter or a hitter can actually get a negative point, but it can happen for pitchers, and it is common. You can get a pitcher that gets basically lit up for 2-3 innings and gets pulled and gets you negative points. So something you want to be aware of. But in general, if you got a guy that's a good pitcher, in a good position, you're getting 20 to 30 total opportunities, but it can vary. Strikeouts are king, I mentioned already, so you get a point usually per out, but you get bonus points for strikeouts. Guys that get 7, 8, 9 strikeouts are guys that are just going to absolutely hit value in terms of pitching. Splits, just like batters, are very important. You don't want to pick a guy that's a left-handed pitcher known to just struggle versus right-handed bats, facing basically a lineup of 8 or 9 right-handed bats, right? You're going to want to be aware of what those splits are, who he struggles against, but more importantly, what the opposing lineup looks like versus his particular handedness. Opposing lineups, again, key indicator there. Day off, rest, another thing you want to be aware of. Sometimes they pitch guys on short rest, which can drastically affect their performance. And I mention that because these guys, especially pitchers, are just, habit kings. They are creatures of their own habits. So a guy typically gets five days rest. That's typical in baseball. Sometimes they have to push it and they get 4. Sometimes they get 6 or 7. Those things, although you might think 7 days rest is even better, not necessarily. These guys are in a very, very repetition type of profession. They're good at what they do because they have their process, and sometimes when they play with that a little bit, can affect them. In addition to that, it may affect actually how long they can go. So if you got a guy coming off 4 days rest, a manager may say, I'm only going to get him 75 pitches or something like that. So again, I won't get into super detail with that, but in general, you want to be aware of all of these factors affecting a pitcher. And then last but not least here, early versus late season workloads. Be careful with the earlier part of the season. Just because you're pitching Max Scherzer or putting him out there in his opening day or one of the very first days of the season, they may limit him to 90 pitches. They may limit him to 100 pitches, which for somebody like him who's very expensive does matter. It makes a huge difference, right? Whereas if it's August and they're deep into the playoff hunt or whatever it is, he may go 120 pitches if they need to. Those things matter. You're going to see guys get 70, 60, 70 pitches in April that would get 100 or a bigger leash, I should say, later in the season. So make sure you pay attention to all of this. It all does matter. Last but not least here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I highly recommend, and I will show you guys, that you go to FanGraphs and look at some of this information, some of the definitions, but there's terminology that you have not seen in other sports available in baseball. And quite frankly, it seems like every single season they invent some new statistic that means something. But the major ones that you want to focus on, I'm not lying here, these are the stats that everybody is using in today's MLB DFS and MLB in general. These are advanced stats, some of them, but they're very, very important. They're going to help you understand who to pick, what position is in a better position than others, what players in a better position, all of that. WOBA is very, very common for a batter. Weighted on base average. You have WRC plus and WRC in general. Weighted run created plus. ISO, isolated power. You have K percentage, walk percentage, really strikeout and walk percentages. XFIP is in Sierra are kind of the advanced ERA. ERA is a thing of the past for a pitcher, but XFIP, expected fielding independent pitching, and Sierra, skill interactive earned run average. So again, just a more advanced ERA. K per 9, walk per 9, strikeouts and walks per 9 innings matters for pitchers. You have your ground ball percentage, your fly ball percentage, understanding which guys basically give up percentages in terms of ground balls versus fly balls. Home runs per 9, again, another statistic for pitchers. Home runs allowed per 9 innings, meaning how many long balls does this guy give up in a 9 inning on average. And then you have home runs for fly balls, so sometimes you combine that with your fly ball percentage, but home runs per fly ball, sometimes you have a guy that has a really, really high fly ball percentage in a park that's favorable to hitters, a short park, whatever it might be. It's warm out and he has a high home run per fly ball rate. Well, that might not be a guy you want to start, but might be a guy you want to take a bat against. And then finally here, soft, medium, and hard hit percentages. These apply to both pitchers and batters, something that you can compare against each other. But again, you want to be aware of soft, medium, and hard hit percentages. So just understanding which players hit maybe a split. For example, a batter might have a really, really high hard hit percentage versus a lefty or something like that. Again, a little bit of terminology here, pretty boring to look at, but these are very, very important statistics that you want to make sure you are aware of, data points that you are aware of when picking your lineups, setting your optimizers, things like that. All right, guys, now we're going to bump over to some actual sources. I'm going to go through some websites that I think are very important, very valuable when picking lineups. And the first, and by far the easiest example of a website, and you can see the only downside is it's loaded with like bloatware ads and stuff, but it is FanGraphs. You can sign up for the site for free. I highly recommend you do so if you're looking into playing MLB DFS and actually getting some advanced statistics. But this site has literally everything you can imagine in terms of data points for MLB DFS. I'm not going to go through all of this. I recommend you guys just pop over to it, check it out, click around, see things. But in general, I'm going to take you over to some of the easier parts of the site to really get your information from, your data points. So this particular page here, let me X out of this ad or whatever. You can see here, you can split this up by splits, leaderboards, player stats, team stats. All of this matters. Pitching versus batting. I just want to point this out to you guys. This is where you get some of those advanced statistics. So right now I am on batting. I'm not on splits or anything like that, but we're just on player stats. It's going to take from the 2021 season. Obviously there's nothing available yet, and that does matter. We'll talk about that in another video. But for right now, we're looking at 2021. You can go to advanced statistics, and you can see a lot of the information, a lot of the terminology I talked about, whether that's K percentage, you can see WRC plus, you can see WOBA here. All of that matters, or does matter, as I mentioned, and it's available here on FanGraphs absolutely free. So again, really, really important that you guys make sure you are aware of FanGraphs. You get over here when you're picking your lineups and you're setting your stuff. You can just kind of click here, and WRC plus 100, I believe, is the average. So you can see here, Bryce Harper in 2021 was really unbelievable in terms of his WRC plus. He was 70 points above, which I believe is 70% above the average player. You have Vlad Guerrero Jr., Juan Soto, Tatis, Ohtani, all of these guys that you are already aware of are great players, great hitters. You can see it kind of comes out through some of these statistics here. You're talking about guys with WOBAs over 400, which is really unbelievable. There's only, what, 4 of them here. But again, really, really important that you guys understand FanGraphs and what you have available. You can use the splits leaderboard. Again, I talked about versus lefties versus righties. If we go versus left-handed pitching and we update it here, and I'm sort of flying through this, but again, advanced stats, WRC plus, who's the best hitter in 2021? And this is only 129 plate appearances, but Mike Zunino was really good versus lefties in 2021. Lewis Robert only had 68 at bats. We find somebody that had, Matt Olson, 254 at bats. You're starting to get into a good sample size here. Had a 159 WRC plus. So a guy that's really good versus lefties. The only other thing I will show you guys, I think I'm logged in here. You can actually, if you saw on the first screen here, you can actually enter player names and build sort of your updated, basically your own customized list. So what I typically do, and I won't break this down here, but when I'm doing a particular slate, and if we go back here to player, we'll go pitching. If I'm doing a particular slate, I will build these lineups or build the potential starters for the day and basically break them down. Again, I'll do all of this in a future video, but in general, FanGraphs, if you create an account, which again is free, they're going to ask you for some donations. You don't have to do it, but in general, it's a very valuable tool. If you hit this here, again, it's going to give you all of the different pitchers, but you can build customized lists of pitchers, so you're not just kind of looking at everybody for the season. You can set up, do you want to look at just 2021, 2022, a combination of both? All of that can be built here into your own custom player list, which I think is a very good tool. But that is FanGraphs. Make sure you guys check it out. It's a tool that I think is extremely valuable. If you don't do anything else, make sure you use FanGraphs. Now, I'm not going to suggest there's one particular, I guess, DFS type of website or service that is better than others, but I will say RotoGrinders is a very, very good site. Again, this is a quasi-free / premium pay-for type of deal here for a DFS site. They've been around for a long time because they're good at what they do. They do all sports, but they do have some very valuable free tools for MLB. And the most important one in particular, or two important ones I should say, are starting lineups, which I think they have an incredible, I guess, user interface here to see starting lineups. Of course, for tomorrow, nothing is released yet. I talked about projections or projected lineups. We can see here, if you go Pirates Cardinals, you can see who is projected to be in the lineup tomorrow to help you set the set your lineups, pick players, make sure who's in versus what. All of that is available. This is just a very easy way. In addition to that, I think they will overlay Vegas totals with this. They'll do a lot of creative things here. Again, free, so you might as well check it out. You can go to their website. But the other thing here that I want to make sure you guys are aware of is MLB weather. There is a guy on here, Kevin Roth. He is incredible in terms of weather. You should follow him on Twitter. He lays out everything, and he understands this is DFS too. So not only will he give you the weather and the kind of the updates leading up to a game, but he will also kind of give you a risk assessment as to whether or not he thinks the game goes, it's delayed, it starts, then gets delayed. All of that will matter. Again, if you're picking a pitcher, you don't want to pick an expensive pitcher in a game that starts and then gets delayed an hour in and he only gets 4 innings. That's going to make a difference, right? So make sure you pay attention. Nothing's out yet on this particular website, but again, MLB forecast, MLB weather through RotoGrinders, an incredible free tool. Now they do, again, have a premium service where you can use optimizers, you can get a lot of the other information. They have a Vegas odds thing here. Again, another free tool, but it'll show kind of the up and downs of the Vegas totals, money lines, things like that for baseball. Really useful tool. You can get a lot of this elsewhere, but it's very nice to have it all under one umbrella, one website that you guys can navigate. So make sure you do check out RotoGrinders. Another thing that I think is important, although it just really depends on, if I could refresh this here, it really just depends on how much you believe into this. I do use batter versus pitcher statistics. I don't use it exclusively, but it is something that I do use. And unfortunately, again, I don't have anything to show you guys here on this particular slate. Let me see if I could maybe update it for 4-7. Maybe we can get something here. If we... Yeah, we do. We have some information for tomorrow already. So this particular site, it is RotoWire. I don't use them for really anything else, but they do have a really clean layout of batter versus pitcher. So what I'm talking about here is a lot of these batters and hitters have a history against a pitcher, and you can actually see how they've performed against them. Now, it is not an exclusive statistic. You should not use this all by itself. The sample sizes are traditionally very, very, very low. 45 here for Colton Wong is extremely high in my opinion versus some of the others. 56, 33, but what you're mostly going to see is something like 10, 12. So getting 3 hits in 10 sounds great for Joe Adele, but in general, I mean, that's not a great sample size. It doesn't really mean anything, but nonetheless, I think it's important to check this out. Somebody like JD Davis has 4 home runs off of a lefty in Patrick Corbin. Pete Alonso, same deal. Patrick Corbin, 4 home runs off of him. Things like this are worth looking at. 6 home runs for Will Myers off of Madison Bumgarner, who's a lefty, but only is hitting 232. So again, be aware of how this is playing out. You have cold batter matchups too, and you have hot pitcher matchups. Of course, he's playing the Pirates, who doesn't have a hot pitcher versus them these days. But in general, I think you guys should check out RotoWire. Again, another free website, or at least it is a pay for website, but you can get on there for free and check out this particular report. It's very useful. And last but not least here, I will talk about the optimizer that I use. I've talked about it for a long time. I've used it in football. A lot of you guys have signed up. Hopefully you've seen the same success that I have. But to be perfectly honest with you guys, I found Daily Fantasy Nerd, the optimizer here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to sign in here, but I'm going to have to obviously block this out for you guys. All right, we're back here. Sorry, didn't realize I wasn't signed in. But to be honest with you guys, I found Daily Fantasy Nerd through MLB DFS. This is the most success I've had in a sport with this optimizer. It is great. It is incredible for football. It's one of those optimizers that's not really talked about in the industry because everybody's trying to promote their expensive one. And as a result, I think less people use this, but it's still a very good quality optimizer that has led to tons and tons of success. But because there's a less pool of people promoting it and using it, you're just not going to see the same lineups. You're not going to see people copying the same things over, using the same data. So I think that's a benefit here, but I will, I'll let you guys decide on that really. But in general, as I mentioned, for baseball, this is where I started with this optimizer and I had a ton of success. I do not know if they actually have their, well, they might. It looks like they have already released their baseball stuff, which is great. I haven't used it yet this season. Obviously, it starts tomorrow, but this is where I will start. And you can see a lot of the statistics that I talked about, and the owners and the creators of this particular website over the years have done a great job with user feedback, adding things that I think matter. And so we are on hitters right now, but you can see for tomorrow, in general, you have Juan Soto leading the pack here, but they have WOBA built in. They have WOBA versus the handedness of the pitcher built in. They have their isolated power built in. They have park factors built in, whether that's weather or whether it's the park in general. So these things are all built in here. They have the Vegas totals, the projected runs to be scored by a team. All of that is built in here. It's an incredible tool. We could hit build optimal lineup here. I don't know if it will. Well, it does. So you have one just freely built here. I'm not going to use this. You guys shouldn't use this. It's obviously not even locked in with players yet. But in general, all of this information is available to you guys that I talked about. All of the valuable terminologies, things I was pulling from FanGraphs is available here. Now, I do not use this exclusively. I talked about how important it is to do your own research in baseball, in MLB DFS. I bring that over here. I like the players I like. I adjust some of it as necessary. And then I let this thing build the lineups. And I look at them and I pick them. They have stacking features, which you guys need to check out. I think this is very, very important. I don't have it available yet, but in general, the stacking features allow you to pick a particular team and use their features to build those lineups. I'll show it in videos. I think we had a lot of success building lineups in football and switching to a style of video where we use the optimizer. So I'll start doing that hopefully tomorrow, if not this weekend. But in general, you guys should check this out. I have an affiliate link down below. It does help support the channel if you guys sign up. But in general, you guys should check this optimizer out regardless. You should be able to get a free trial. If you like it, keep signing up. If not, great, use something else. I'm not gonna force you guys or try to beg you guys to use the optimizer I use. I just, from my experience, have used a lot of them, and this has been my favorite. But same deal here with pitchers. I talked about all those different statistics available for hitters. We have even projected Vegas strikeouts, 8.5 here. You have the projected Vegas win percentage, 57% for Garrett Cole. These things matter, especially on FanDuel when a win is worth a ridiculous amount of points. When strikeouts are king, and you know this guy has a really good chance of not only getting the win, but he also is projecting nearly 9 strikeouts. A lot of this information will be filled in as the lineups are locked. So as the batters that Garrett Cole is facing in Boston kind of get locked in and are confirmed, they will publish this information in the opponent here. It's just obviously a day early, so it's not going to have that available. Pitcher, you have your strikeout percentages, your Sierra, your XFIP, your WOBA versus lefties versus righties, all of this information right in front of you guys in the optimizer here, something you can utilize. So that's really it though. Hopefully this primer video is helpful for you guys. Again, we broke down what MLB DFS is. We talked about some of the more valuable sites that I think you guys need to be checking out, both from a free sense and from a premium subscribe sense. But you can do all of your research. If you didn't get the image, or if you didn't get the picture here, you can do all of your research for free. You can use FanGraphs exclusively. You can use MLB odds on RotoGrinders and RotoWire and their things for free. And you can set your lineups and still be successful. Now, I do highly recommend you guys check out optimizers. It's going to be really hard to keep up with the field in bigger tournaments without it. But in general, this is the primer video. I hope you guys got some useful information. Please make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'll be putting out videos constantly throughout the season. I think right now I'm aiming for 2 videos a week. I cannot keep up with putting out a video every single night for MLB DFS. I'll try to use the YouTube shorts to kind of accomplish that in between, but in general, I don't know the exact setup yet, but definitely on Friday and or Saturday will be a major video related to setting a lineup for MLB DFS each and every week, considering those are some of the bigger slates. Those are the slates that typically have a lot of the aces available, but then I'll try to fit in another video throughout the week. And as I mentioned, I'll try to use YouTube shorts to kind of give you guys some optimized lineups. If you didn't check out in football, I was doing that towards the end of the season, just putting out 10-15 second videos where we run the optimizer and kind of give you guys some free lineups. So all of that will be available. We'll see how the season goes. If you guys have any comments, please leave them down below. Any questions, any other information or sites or resources that you guys think are valuable for the season, please leave them down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. Besides that, wish you guys the best of luck this upcoming season. Get excited. Tomorrow is opening day for MLB, opening day for MLB DFS also. With that, I'm out, and I will check you out in the next video.